Hello, and welcome to the Modern Romantic Podcast, where we celebrate and inspire romanticism through passionate people who do incredible things. Hi, I'm number 35. I will be singing Hi, I'm Trey from the musical The Modern Romantic Podcast. And
Oh,
I'm joined by my co host, Emily, who will join me in this duet.
that's right. And go.
Hi, I'm Trey. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Oh, you asked for
Good
4
show.
bars. Thank you.
Or
How are you, Emily?
I'm all right. I'm in the wrong place. This is weird.
Okay, so am I. One
How did
moment,
this
please.
happen?
I don't know. Let's
Oh,
switch this around for just a second.
it's like musical chairs. We're not ready for this.
How's your week been?
Pretty good. Pretty good. It's finally getting warmer out. I'm here for that. And yeah, just, the usual. Working on spring.
Yes.
How about you? You have all kinds of show stuff happening.
Yes. So at time of recording on Saturday, I've got an audition for Hairspray. And
Okay.
then callbacks are 2 days after if I get a callback. Then a week later, I have auditions for Hunchback of Notre Dame. Two very different shows, but woo, theater. And then after that, they just put up auditions for the Share Show locally. So yeah, so
Is that what it's called? The Share Show?
the Share Show.
Oh,
Yes.
I don't know about this one.
It's think like a jukebox musical about Cher's life, all
Okay.
set to the songbook of Cher.
Okay.
So it's really fun. It's cute. It's fun. It's going
sounds
to be a
fun.
good time. But I am really excited to get the perspective of our guest tonight.
Yeah.
Of all things theater, you know, my personal biases aside, but I am really excited to get her perspective. So, would you please introduce our fantastic guest today?
I was gonna say personal biases. Why not? This is a good one. It's not like you're anti Lord of the Rings. Tonight on the Modern Romantic, we're joined by Broadway film and television director Sammi Cannold. Welcome to the show, Sammi.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah.
This has been an exciting wait to have you on the show. And we were talking before the show a little bit about Evita and the story of Evita and things like that. And I was like, no, we should stop talking until Sammi gets here.
Well, I'm so glad to be here, and so grateful that you invited me. Thank you.
I think one of the things that I'd love to know first and foremost is how did you get started in directing? Because I know everybody's journey to theater is a little bit different.
You were just
Yeah.
like born and then directing.
Yes.
We're just
No,
gonna
2
dive
minutes
right
old.
in.
I started. Yes. No.
Right. Yeah.
Well, for me, I was very lucky that my mom worked in theater when I was growing up. And so I was all around it and had so much exposure to it and absolutely loved it as a kid. And I ended up going to school for theater and ended up majoring in theater and concentrating in directing. And then when I got out of school, I started directing bit by bit and have sort of never looked back. It's interesting. I think a lot of people who are directors come to directing vis-a-vis acting or by being a dancer, then being a choreographer, then being a director. It's I think something that people often will come to on the later side. And for me, because for better or worse, I don't have any talent on stage. For me, it was always directing was always the thing, and I feel very lucky to get to do what I do, and now I get to do it in a number of different like adjacent art forms, but it's always directing. So
See, I'm very envious because I love being on stage, but when you ask me to direct something, I don't always have the quote unquote vision for something. So I'm curious from your perspective, what really inspires that vision, or what do you look for that kind of starts to create that vision when you approach a show?
it's interesting because the word vision was so elusive to me when I first started directing because so often when you're an emerging director, you're asked, what's your vision for this? What's your concept? What's your conceit? And I would try to like come up with the vision, like I would try to force a vision, and I think that it always felt a little bit contrived. And then I found that a lot of what was exciting me was dreaming up productions of uh, work that I already loved. So I would go see a musical, or there would be a musical that I grew up on that I had always dreamt of doing a production of. And over time, I would think like, oh, what if we did a production that was done this way, or had this aspect to it, or was site specific or immersive, or and I would think of these dimensions of work that I already knew, and that sort of was what unlocked the idea of having a vision to me. I think having a vision with brand new work is something that I find a lot harder, because it's something that you don't really have a baseline to go off of. You are creating the world for the very first time. It's never existed before. So that's been a skill that I've sort of developed more recently, is how to create a vision or a conceit when something is brand new. But for me, I usually won't touch a revival unless I have an idea that I feel merits touching it. Because otherwise, so many of the original productions of classic work are so iconic. And so if I don't have an idea that merits looking at it anew, we might as well just do a replica of the brilliant original. And so I like to think of that as like the baseline test of like, is my idea saying something new? Is it adding a new dimension? Then, okay, worth pursuing. But if I'm just sort of rehashing what's already been done, maybe not worth it.
Right. This is good. I like this because I feel like maybe more people could approach things that way. And also, for anybody out there thinking of redoing The Princess Bride, I know it's not Broadway, but
But it
stop
is.
it.
They're developing
it?
it for Broadway.
Okay, so yeah, Broadway, I could see that. But like, if you're gonna redo the movie, stop it.
Oh, we did the movie. Oh, that
Right.
I don't know about.
Yeah, I could see that being nice on Broadway. Nice was a terrible word to use. I apologize.
No.
I could see it being good for Broadway.
Yeah.
Someone's obviously going to have to write music.
Yeah.
I do have to say, if Inigo Montoya's like speech that he gives is not turned into a song of some sort, or even like a slight joke of a song that's kind of reused and rehashed, done. I'm out.
I see. Wow.
I would see this. Yeah.
Yeah. Time will tell.
You saying that your work, or when you interpret something, kind of needs to say something new. Like looking at some of your past repertoire, you've got Evita. You did an immersive Violet on a Bus. You've done Ragtime on Ellis Island, which I can only imagine that. Those are not small works by any stretch of the imagination. So walking into those types of things, like take for instance Ragtime on Ellis Island, what was the quote unquote vision for that in that particular space?
That it really came from a deep love and affection of that show, and it was right after I had done this production of Violet, site specifically on a bus, and I was so obsessed with and excited about the form of site specific theater. And so I took a notebook and I made a list of every musical that I thought could be performed site specifically. And Ragtime paired with Ellis Island was on the top of that list. And I was like, well, I don't know that could ever happen. But I wrote to a company called Evelyn Hill that was I believe they still are, the vendor for Ellis Island that does all the like parties and banquets that happen on Ellis Island. And I said, hey, what would it look like to rent the island for a night to do this piece of theater? And I was very lucky that the woman who ran the company at the time, perhaps she still does, whose name was Patty, wrote back to me and said, here's the permit to rent Ellis Island, if you, can raise the money and fill it out, it's yours. And that was so crazy to me to think like, oh, I could rent a national landmark. And then through the efforts of what we like to call 22-22-year-olds, because it really was 22-22-year-olds, we raised money, we came together and, formed a little production bubble and made this thing happen that was so wacky and out of the box and had so many logistical hurdles. And I think that when I look back on it now, no longer being 22, I'm 32. I look at it and I think, oh gosh, part of the reason that something like that was possible was because I was 22 and my friends were 22 and we were a little bit reckless. And we like didn't know what we didn't know. And so we were like, yeah, we can do a musical on an island. And that kind of spirit of, can do, I think is sometimes something that we lose a little bit of as we have more and more experiences and become more and more cautious because of those experiences. I have, so much reverence for experience, and experience really matters. And at the same time, something I think a lot now that I'm a decade into my professional career is making sure that I hold on to the slight recklessness of what I was doing when I was 22.
I love that so much because I teach art as well, and one of the things that I notice with teaching high schoolers or young kids is that they're reckless or whatever. They're not afraid to innovate. They're not afraid to dive in and just there's no like walls or barriers. It's just imagination, and that kind of raw imagination is something that I see also lost because I also teach adults art as well. And I see that happen where all of a sudden it's like the word I can't comes into play, or I shouldn't, or whatever. And I find that that's from a teacher, that's frustrating because now I have something to overcome so that they can start doing art. Whereas
Totally.
kids, it's a lot easier. And I kind of wish we could all go back to some of that more childlike, um, I guess imagination is the best word for it. Like that, I'm not afraid to innovate. I'm not afraid to go for it. If you look back, like you said, looking back now, like, would you do the same thing again? Maybe, maybe not. Having done it though, that kind of gives you that, like, I can
Yeah.
now, which I think is awesome. And I wish more people could see life that way.
It's really, that's so telling, seeing the comparison of the young students and the adult students.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I try to catch myself when I think there are times when I say I can't, and there's good reason
Sure.
of these things that I learned where I'm like, oh, that production, we tried this and it didn't work, and I'm going to take that learning into the next one. But then there are times where I say I can't, and I don't know where it's coming from. It's coming from like a ingrained sense of caution that doesn't have a specific reason for it. I think we're also so budget conscious in the way that we make a lot of art now,
Mm-hmm.
for good reason. But as a result, I sometimes catch myself in design processes where, we'll say, and then there's a staircase that goes up to the sky, and then somebody goes down the elevator, and I'll catch my brain going, oh, we can't afford an elevator. And I'm like, okay, but like, imagine for a second, anything is possible. What would the design be? And then let's talk about what's practical after that. But like first,
Yeah.
let's dream. And I try to catch myself when I'm thinking that way.
Yeah. Dream big first and then pare down if you need to. Yeah.
Yeah.
You were going to say something, Trey.
No, we talk about that like when we're designing content at work. So while I don't work in a very artistic space, we still tell ourselves to do that
Mm,
because to do fun things to teach other people, you have to do something that's crazy and out of the box. And sometimes those make it to the fully funded projects, and those are the things that matter.
mm, totally. Yeah, that makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
It reminds me of the wings when we made the big wings for a photo shoot, and it was a runway show first. And it was like, okay, let's make these big cybernetic wings. And then what my friend's idea of big was 4 feet, and my idea of big was 12 feet.
Mm,
And they should also open from 4 feet to 12 feet. by pulling cables and stuff. And I remember the looks on their faces when I said 12 feet. And they were like, well, we don't even know how to build that. And I was like, let's sit down and figure that out. And so I don't know why I brought that up. It just reminded me of the wings. Like, why not? Why
Yeah.
can't they be 12 feet just because you
Yeah.
didn't think of 12 first?
Totally.
Yeah.
So
Go for the 12-foot wings.
we'll go for the 12-foot wings.
We did it. They were
Tomorrow.
12 feet.
Yeah.
And they're
They
incredible.
opened. Yeah. They were. And I have to figure out a way to use them now. It's been a while. Anyway, you were saying, Trey.
Well, Sammy, we've talked about from your perspective as like a director, but I want to flip it back on the audience. The perspective I had on some audiences and the reaction to some shows, they're coming to hear singers do crazy runs, they're there to see the spectacle of things, and but it makes me worry that sometimes they're not open to listen to the vision that's happening on stage and the full message of that. So during your artistic process, what are you doing to encourage that audience to go to stop and really listen to what's and see both cognitively and then also intaking in of themselves what is happening on stage?
For me, it all comes to story. I think that when spectacle or vocal gymnastics or something else is in service of story, it can be so unbelievably thrilling. I think that when it's there for the sake of being there, it to me feels gratuitous. And I think that, if all we were looking for in theater was spectacle, and things that are thrilling, we could go to a theme park, or we could, do something else that is spectacle driven, go watch a fireworks show or something like that. And I think that, to me, what sets theater apart is how story driven it is. And so, the moments when story calls for incredible spectacle are some of my favorite moments in the theater ever. And also, I think that it's because they were so grounded in the fact that I cared about the characters and I was on the journey with these characters. So I think it's part of why, in new musicals take forever to develop now. They take many, many years to get to, when they're ready for the stage. And I think that part of that is that, you really want to get the story right before you're putting something on its feet or even entering a room with actors. Honing what your storytelling is will give way to physical production in a way that's really exciting, but not if the story isn't on solid ground first.
Well put.
Yeah, the heart of the story still needs to matter and be conveyed in the way that it should. So that is a solid answer.
It kind of reminds me of Gregor Maguire's answer of like when he said he was he received a bunch of requests to adapt Wicked, and so going through the list of things and finally landing on Stephen Schwartz and really getting to the heart of what Wicked was all about. Pitched him the opening song, "No One Wants the Wicked," and he goes, "You got it." That was it. So it's what really is at the heart of the story is really what he cared about.
Yeah, makes sense.
Speaking of the heart, I feel like Evita is one of the things that I know of your works the best because I've seen, not that I've seen bootlegs of any of these performances, but I have definitely heard many, many positive things about your productions of Evita, specifically from the location is going to get me. I think it's the American Shakespeare.
Yes, we did one at the American Repertory Theater and then Shakespeare Theater Company. So
Okay.
yeah, similar. Yeah.
Conflating the two, but I've heard so many wonderful things about that. So I want to start off by asking, what about Evita attracts you to that particular production?
Well, I saw the revival of Evita when I was a teenager. And I was so I didn't get to see the original because I wasn't born, but I've similarly seen recordings, but I was so knocked out when I saw it by the story of this young woman, and was immediately struck by the fact that in uh, early on in the show, someone says that she's 15 years old, and at the time that I was seeing it, I think I was 16 or 17, and I was so um, uh, moved by watching the story of a teenager who then goes on to become the most powerful woman in her hemisphere. And I think that female power and what female power looks like and how it manifests is something that we don't talk about a lot in at least musical theater. And so I was very drawn to the idea of telling her story through the lens of what female power means and where it comes from and the complications to it. And so the production that I directed, which had three different forms, we first did it at New York City Center, and then we did it at those two theaters. Um, really was through the lens of myself and the other creatives on it. The core creative team was or choreography music team. We were all women, and there were a number of Argentinian artists on the team as well. And I think that specific lens was really how we saw the story and how we interpreted the story, and led to a very specific angle on Ava's teenage years that we really explored in that production. And one of the beauties of getting to do iterations of the production multiple times was that we really got to hone that storytelling in a way that was very exciting. And the first time we did it, it seemed that people were responding to some of the ideas, and they were kind of getting what we were trying to say. And then by the third time we did it, there was this beautiful review in the Washington Post that Peter Marks wrote that basically repeated back in the most eloquent language what exactly it was that we were trying to say without us saying it. And that was really meaningful to me to read, to be like, wow, this man who is outside of the demographic of people who made this particular production, or who our target audience was, got it. And that was so exciting for me, and I think for all of us. So it was a labor of love.
Yeah. When you are working so hard to put a production on that's whether it's a fun, happy one or a more heartfelt, deep one with a strong message like that, at what point during a production are you able to kind of step back and go, oh yeah, this is it, this is why I do what I do, and you can actually maybe enjoy the moment or take a step back and kind of see what what it is you're doing that's fulfilling? Does that occur to you at all during the production, or is it only after?
It's for me at least, it's often not the moment that you would expect it to be. Like when I was growing up, I thought that the day that I made my Broadway debut as a director would be the coolest, best, most awesome day of my life. It would be like covered in fairy dust. And the day that I actually made my Broadway debut as a director was so stressful, and there was so much going on, and I was running around like a chicken, and my shoes hurt, and like everything was crazy. And and a part of it is that, like, on opening night of a Broadway show, you're coordinating 5 million different things, and you're waiting for the reviews to drop, which is like never a nice feeling because there's so much like stress and anticipation around that. And there's the idea that you're locking the show and walking away and you can't touch it anymore, I think is very stressful for a lot of directors. And so I was sitting there being like, wow, this was supposed to be like the best day of my life. Like what's wrong? And I think that what I learned from that is that there were days on that show and on other shows that I can rank among the best days of my life. It's just not often the fancy days. It's like the very quiet moment in a rehearsal room when an actor like has a breakthrough after you've been working on something for a really long time, or it's the moment where like you see a big giant set change come together for the first time and you're like, wow, that was magical, or things like that come when you're not expecting them. And I think that, to me, that's like part of the magic of getting to be a director, is like the magic lives in like moments in the process that you might not think it does, versus in the product. Like, I often don't like watching my own shows
Right.
because I just see things that I want to change. um, so it's more the joy being in the process than it is in the product. Though I know that for audiences, often the joy is in the product, right? The audience doesn't
Right.
care what I do in a process, what the actors do in a process. I mean, they like BTS or whatever, but that's not where the joy comes from for them. It's in seeing the thing. But
Right.
I think for artists, so often the joy is in the process.
And I imagine being behind the scenes, like, you already know most of what's going on. Like, you've got your finger in some little part of everything. And so I imagine that's even harder to surprise you with those moments, because you already kind of know what's going on. So just
Yeah,
be able to go, oh yeah, here's this cool new set change and it's magical for you. That must be an even rarer thing, which is
yeah.
even more magical maybe. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. Like when I'm watching the show for the 20th time, I'm like hoping there aren't surprises, right? Because if there are surprises, something's gone wrong. Um, uh, but it's like the firsts, and the firsts don't happen in front of an audience, really. I mean, sometimes
Yeah.
I would say that the very first time a show is performed in front of an audience, like first preview of something, is both, at least for me, very magical and very painful because there's something spectacular about the first time that an audience is receiving something, especially if the audience knows they're the first ones to receive it. They're often so warm and friendly, and there's such a cool exchange. But at the same time, it's painful because you're so early in the process of completing the show in the life of what we call a preview process, that you watch like 10 million things go wrong, and you're like, oh, that's not supposed to happen there, that's supposed to happen there, and it's part of the process.
Sure.
But yeah.
When it comes to the audition process, there's always a dream of like, what can I do to impress the director so that I get picked? What advice do you have for those individuals that are walking into that audition room?
Perhaps it's cliche to say, but I really think that the saying, it's not you, it's me, is so much of what shapes auditions for me, in the sense that, like, I everybody who comes into an audition room is talented in their own way. There is no, to me, there is no objectivity to what talent is. There are certain metrics of, can you hit that note, or can you um, dance at this level. But I think that it is so often about fit, to me, that and I think so often actors don't necessarily know some of the calculations that go into who ultimately gets a job, because so often they are so beyond an actor's control. And an actor could have done absolutely everything right in an audition, have absolutely slayed every part of it, been like so unbelievably talented, and not get the role if they're not the right fit. And in addition to not being the right fit, there's also the element of like, are they the right fit for the mosaic that you're making when you're making a company? And can you imagine this person opposite this person who's already cast? Or does this person believably play the daughter of this person? I mean, so often I make casting decisions on the basis of age. And I think that that's such a hard thing, I think, to reckon with as an actor, because you can't do anything to affect your age. You are your age. That's it. And so often someone will come in and be totally perfect for a role 5 years ago, and there's nothing I can do about that. And again, to me, it comes back to storytelling of like, okay, the storytelling of this particular character is that they're really like young and naive, and they're like rebellious against their parents and they're not listening to authority. And so I really need them to read as a teenager. And the person who just came in was incredible, but doesn't read as a teenager. And so that's where I think the hard decisions often happen. And I think I like to say it to actors because I think that sometimes I'll talk to actor friends who will walk out of auditions and say, I absolutely aced that. I know I did my best work and then I didn't get it. What happened?
Right.
And I just think I hope people know that it's not them. It's the process and the way casting works and the surplus of incredible actors and the low demand for roles.
It makes sense because I did an audition at Disney, and while Disney gets a rap sometimes, the people who came out before the audition gave a huge speech to the cattle that was sitting in that room and said, "Look, you're all talented. We know that you're talented. You know that you're talented. But please understand that," and they held up that big, thick book, the Disney Lookbook, and they said, "We have to go by these standards. And
Mm.
so you might be an incredible fit, but you're 6'2", and we need somebody that's 5'8". It really sometimes comes down to that. They said,
Mhm.
"We believe in you. We want you to do your best. So please show up and be your best person. But please know at the end of the day that we have to make some hard decisions because of things that are outside of your control."
Yeah.
And that was really nice to hear, especially from an institute like Disney. So I'm happy to hear that it's like you still recognize the talent, even though they may not fit in the mosaic of what you're trying to create.
Yeah, and I think that you never know where a given audition or interaction is going to lead. I mean, I personally keep a spreadsheet of every actor I've ever worked with, and I also have a tab on that spreadsheet for actors that I've seen in a show or auditioned that I haven't worked with yet, but that I want to work with. Like if an audition is particularly amazing, but I don't have a role for that actor, I will put them on that tab of that spreadsheet so that I remember in the future, oh, that was somebody that I was really excited about and wanted to work with. And I've written to actors 7 years after an interaction, and then I get these emails back from them being like, "You remembered that?" And I'm not the only one. A lot of directors have long memories. Like, in casting directors, it's our job to file away these extraordinary performances and then think when the right thing comes up. Or I've been working uh, in ceremonies a lot recently, and in ceremonies, there's often a great need for people who speak different languages fluently. And so I'll go through my spreadsheet of every actor I've ever worked with, being like, who's fluent in Mandarin, and then I find somebody who I haven't worked with in ages, but they're the only person on my spreadsheet who's fluent in Mandarin. And then I say, hello, do you remember me? And then they're so surprised. But I think that, like, so much of directing or casting or hiring in this industry is like pairing the right person with the right opportunity. And just because a given moment isn't the right one doesn't mean there isn't going to be another moment with that same group of people down the line.
Right. I've done that with models too.
Mhm.
I went to a lot of model calls for various runway shows I did, and there were times when another designer got that model that I really wanted, and so I did the same thing. I just kept their information, and as soon as I could use them, I would. Or, so sometimes it never worked out, but at least I had it. Similar thing. Like, I would try to tell models the same thing. Like, just because you didn't make this time doesn't mean you're not perfect for something. It
Mm.
just isn't this one thing.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
those two industries are both very difficult for, I believe, those auditions and calls, because that you can walk away thinking you did your best work, like Trey said, and not realizing that you were just a little short, or you didn't fit into the shoe, or whatever it was. The mosaic parallel is something I really love too, that you said. That's really a nice way to look at it.
Yeah, I think about it a lot, particularly in musicals. You know, when you're like, okay, we need somebody who can hit this note and somebody who, does gymnastics. And we need this person over here. It's like such a like delicate thing of like this person goes here, this person goes here. Particularly when you're building a show that you hope will have a long life, and then you're going to have replacements in it. Um, you know, there are such specific requirements for different roles, and so often, I mean, I think on Broadway, or equivalent level right now, it's very rare that there is an ensemble track that doesn't have to cover a principal or do something that's a specialty skill. And so, so often you're not actually auditioning for that ensemble track necessarily. You're auditioning for what you would need to cover. And so we're thinking not who's going to make up the best ensemble, though that's of course part of it, but is like, oh, do we have two understudies for this lead in our ensemble? And it's if you go to your average Broadway show today and you look at the ensemble, and it's a fun game where you can look at the ensemble and try to pick out who are the understudies for these principal tracks. There's a math to all of the matrix of how things are cast. And of course, the marriage of math and humanity is like, and you want to make it a humane process and make sure that, everybody is seen and appreciated for their incredible talent. And also the show has specific needs and, tracks. So it's about sort of what is the alignment of those two things.
Hearing you talk about that specifically, I have two questions. One, how do you stay sane, keeping and balancing all of that information? And then I've got a second question, but I want you to answer the first.
Ooh, I think the job of a director is hard, and that's something I've embraced recently. I used to sort of be like, no, it's not hard, but I do think it's hard because you are navigating the leading a group of people that can sometimes be as big as hundreds into a common goal. And on a mission that has a common goal. And I think that kind of leadership has a level of stress and immense responsibility to it, and it's one I take very seriously. I have not. I'm not answering your question because I haven't really figured out how. No, I would say the closest thing I have to an answer is that I have an amazing husband who is like an incredible grounding force, and he used to work and still sort of works in humanitarian aid in Afghanistan. And I think being exposed to the life and death stakes of his work, and how he handles it with such calm and grace, is very inspiring to me when I think about my work, because while directing and the productions that I get to direct, whether in musicals, TV, whatever, are very, very important to me and very important to a lot of people, they are not, at the end of the day, life and death. And so since meeting him, I have brought a level of calm and chill to my work that I didn't have previously, because I've gained perspective on like what is worth freaking out about and what is not.
Well said. I would agree that perspective definitely helps, and your partner. I can say, having had a partner who I've talked to after auditions may have not gone well, looked at me and goes, "Did anybody die?" No. Okay, you're fine. You didn't break a leg, literally. You're good.
Totally. And I think that, to some extent, you have to, when you're going into an audition, or for me, when I'm going into like a pitch meeting, or when I'm, that art becomes like the most important thing in the world for a second. And like, I think of it with such great importance. And also you have to be able to like go home at the end of the day and like let that go and be like, okay, I'm, healthy. I'm happy. I can, at the end of the day, like that's more than most of the world can say. And so like, good.
Right, right. Then I'm thinking like there may be elements of this that for someone else, I guess maybe I'm saying that you maybe are just built for this in a way that maybe someone else would go more insane because they're built different. So like when it comes to some things that I do that maybe someone else feels the same way, but they're things I relish. The stressors that someone else might see as insane stressors, I might go, bring it on. This is just a cool challenge for me, not, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like maybe that's the difference too. Like you're obviously built for this. I think very obviously built for this. So the thing that might be the insane thing that we might see, like how do you keep your sanity, might
Mhm.
just be like not as insane to you as it is to us.
Well, I think it's you know, I was lucky that I grew up around it, and
Yeah.
so I watched my mom have her heart broken by theater in 10 million different ways, and I think that you know, theater will uh, you know, make your dreams come true, but then it will break your heart the next day. And
Mhm.
you know, I have maybe 10 to 12 projects at a given time across theater, film, TV, ceremonies, and on any given day, one of them is going great and one of them is like floundering. And that's just how it is. I imagine it like having 10 to 12 children, you know, on any given day, one of them is going to be having a great day and one of them is going to be having a terrible day. And so you just sort of have to, I think I've trained myself over a decade to like expect that. And I think it's about sort of calibrating expectations. But I also think it's important to acknowledge that I've been extraordinarily lucky, you know, and I feel really fortunate to say that I make my living as a director and as a working artist. And I have so many friends and so many colleagues who can't. And I think that uh, the level, yes, I've had projects fall apart in horrible ways. I've been, you know, betrayed by people who were my collaborators, or, you know, all these, you know, there are different things that can really be so painful in this industry. But at the same time, I've been very lucky. And I think that I don't, uh, the stress that I think a lot of actors in particular feel, or people in design realms, or directors who are still in emerging positions feel, where they are dependent on other people for their ability to make money and work, um, is, I think, a much more stressful situation than the one I'm fortunate to be in, where I don't have to worry, at the moment at least, about, you know, where my next meal is coming from. I make a steady income from being an artist, but it's not a stable job for everyone. During the pandemic, it certainly wasn't stable for me. You know, it's very seasonal. People go through ups and downs. So I think it's just figuring out what the ways of coping with those ups and downs
Sure.
is for you.
Sure. We have a question from our previous guest, who is
Oh,
Steven Seidenberg.
great.
That was our last week's episode. Steven is a photographer and an author, and I think it's fair to say that he's also a philosopher. And his question for you is, does it feel like an insult to be called creative aristocracy?
um, so for anyone who might not know, that's referring to a list that Town and Country made in 2023 of creative
Okay.
aristocracy that I was listed on this list of creative aristocracy. It's like every year they publish a list.
Mhm.
Um, no, I don't find it insulting. I think it was a lovely way of saying, um, these are some people that we, Town and Country, are excited about this year, and I was very honored by the mention.
Very
Very
nice.
nice.
Yeah. We told him a little bit about you so that he would know what, kind of where to go to ask. So he must have looked that up and
I
seen
love
that
it.
that was
I could see
something
how in
about it.
another context the word aristocracy would bring up other things, but I think in that case it's really meant to be a compliment.
Yeah, I think context matters
Yeah.
for that one. Yeah.
Um, I have two questions left, really. My first one is you have mentioned that you've directed TV. We've talked about musical theater. You've also directed opera. So
Mhm.
between all of those, because I love so many of those things, uh, what changes from your perspective when you're switching between those genres?
A lot changes. And I think the jump from theater to opera is not as big as the jump from theater to TV because in TV you have a whole other language with which you're telling a story that doesn't exist in theater. I think like TV is like two layers of storytelling, whereas theater's one. And well, I guess you could say theater is two as well because there's the like live interaction with the audience, and it's just different two layers. Um, but in every medium that I get to work in, there's a different vocabulary and skill set that I have to learn. And it's become a sort of fun challenge for me to say, okay, I understand the principles of storytelling, I understand the principles of directing. Those are the same across mediums. If you, in any medium, if you have a small child standing here and a puppy standing here, and the child says, uh, Fido, and the dog comes running towards the small child, that's going to be an emotional reaction no matter what medium you're telling it in. Those sorts of like uh, core emotional things that we understand as humans exist across all mediums. But the way that you tell that story effectively changes with each medium and with the tools that you have in each medium. So I would say it's taken me an average of 2 to 3 years each time I switch a medium or add a medium to understand everything that I need to understand to be able to work in it effectively. And part of that is through shadowing directors who work in those mediums. Part of it is taking courses, TV ceremonies. I both shadowed and took courses in both. I read books, I listen to podcasts. It's, everywhere you can get information about what it looks like. Um, I think if you're interested in jumping mediums, you should, because it's not directing is not a like one size fits all thing. It is really how effective you are. Really, it relates to your understanding of the tools that you have.
Well, so can I just clap for this episode? Like,
No.
uh,
Yeah, of course.
my second
For sure.
question has really nothing to do with anything we've talked about thus far. And that is, if you could sit down with anybody in the world, alive or dead, who would be
Mm.
sitting on the opposite side of that table from you?
It's such a hard question. There's so many, but I will say, I think I would choose a woman named Hazel Mackay, who basically nobody knows about, who was a director in America at the turn of the 20th century. She directed these large scale suffrage pageants, like women's suffrage. And she would often have up to like 5,000 people in these pageants. And they were these massive theatrical spectacles that she would direct, like on national landmarks or on the street or in communal spaces. And I am just so in awe of how she managed to do that before technology existed. And, when I think about the ways that we put together large scale productions today and how reliant we are on email and text and walkie talkies and, or the fancier version of walkie talkies, and we don't even use those anymore. Um, um, but like all these things that we need to be able to make a production now. I just would love to know more about how she did it. And while I've read a lot of, you know, historical texts about what she did. There's just not a lot about like process, and
Right.
I would love to know more.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating. I want to be at that lunch too. So
You're welcome to join us.
thank
For the,
you. We're
yeah.
gonna have lunch. And then just to update our audience, we did ask Sammi a question for our next guest, who is Helen Laser, who is a multi-talented voiceover artist, and she's won awards and done some writing and illustration and things like that. And your question to her, because one of her special talents was that she could sing the Star Spangled Banner in a minor key, right? Well, that was it.
I Googled her, and that's what it said on her resume under special skills. And I think it would be fun for your audiences if she sang it in a minor key, if she's willing.
I agree. We're going to ask her. So I've written that down for next week.
That's so fun.
Yes.
Look forward to watching.
Me too.
Well, Sammi, I have to say, I have really enjoyed this last hour with you. Your perspective on directing, your perspective on theater, and everything kind of wrapped in it is with such a clear-cut perspective that I don't often get to experience with some directors. So it is refreshing to see how clear-cut that is, and that you still maintain such a human-centric approach to what you do. So thank you for spending that with us and sharing that with us.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me and for the wonderful questions and everything. I loved the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we did too.
I did lie earlier. I do have one final question. Are there any projects that you'd like to promote coming up, and
yeah.
where can our audience find you?
Yes.
Yes. I am on Instagram mostly. I'm also on TikTok, but I need to work on that. It's just my name. I can never remember if there's a period in the middle, but if you search my name, Sammi Cannold, it will come up. There's only one of me. And I, in terms of future projects, I have a new musical called Grimm that is opening at the La Jolla Playhouse in San Diego this fall. It starts previews in late October, early November. And then a new musical coming up at the Taper in Los Angeles called The Turning. And then I'm working on a few things that I'm not allowed to talk about yet, but as soon as I am, I will put them on Instagram.
We'll have to watch for that. And yes, your Instagram does have a period between Sammi and Cannold.
Oh, thank you.
So for those watching, it's
okay. Can never remember. I think like my Twitter has no period. But I don't use Twitter anymore. So
yeah, same. We don't either.
Mm-hmm. That's incredible. You can also find Sammi at her website, sammicannold.com. You can see some incredible production photos from past performances of Evita, Sunset Boulevard, the production of Ragtime on Ellis Island, Violet on a Bus, so many others. I was slightly obsessed with them, so I'm very excited to get to find them. Please go support Sammi. Of course, you can find our past episodes on our website at themodrom.com or wherever you happen to get your episodes, your podcast episodes specifically. We're also on Patreon. Search for The Modrom. And thanks so much for tuning in. We really couldn't do this show without you, our lovely listeners. So thanks so much.